X number of years left to live. Every day is a day closer to death for all of us, and we don't know when that day is going to come. And so you've got to try and get out there and do good stuff, ideally with other people as well.
You're listening to the Adventure Sports Podcast. We talk with adventurers from around the globe to bring you the inspiration and motivation you need to get started in the outdoors or to keep you moving if you're already there. Now here's your host, Kurt Linville.
Hi friends, thank you for joining the Adventure Sports Podcast today. I'm excited to introduce to you Mike Ellicock. Mike just this summer completed rowing all the way around the UK, and it was 1,820 miles. And he set a new record, I believe, 49 days for doing this, but he did it for a reason. He has a charity called Support Our Paras, and we're going to talk a lot more about that. 25 years ago, he was part of the parachute regiment out of the UK and did some amazing things. We'll get into a little bit of that, but now he has a charity to support the paras, and for this, he did this epic rowing trip around the UK, and I want to hear all the details about how that went. So, Mike, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kurt. Great to be here.
You were telling me before we hit record here that you've done quite a few kind of epic feats. You hold some Guinness Book World Records, and but the most recent one is what we're going to talk about today. But we'll revisit the list, okay? But before we do, where are you today?
So I'm in Lewes. It looks like Lewes, but it's near Brighton in Sussex, south of London. I'm on the Meridian line. So for those of you adventurers listening, I'm, spot on the Meridian line.
So you always know what time it is there?
Indeed. Yeah. I'm on UTC. Oh, yeah. Well, actually, it's summertime here at the moment. So
I think it's really funny. I finally figured it out. I was thrown for a loop. In the United States, we say S for standard time. So if I say MST, that means Mountain Standard Time. That means not Daylight Savings Time. But in Europe, S stands for summertime.
Yeah, we're BS. Yeah, British summertime. Yeah.
So our standard time acronym looks like your Daylight Savings Time. Anyway, I finally sorted that out because in my head, I was like, wait a minute, they should be 7 hours, not 8 hours, Yeah.
No, in my day job, I talk a lot about TLAs, three-letter abbreviations that you get familiar with your own ones, but you don't know anyone else's.
Well, I worked for many, many years in an industry that is so rich with acronyms, I don't want to even get into it. It's complete alphabet soup.
Everyone is. Yeah.
Sometimes I think that industries do this. This is totally an aside, but they do it just so they can speak their own language and no one will understand what they're talking about.
It's all about tribes. Everything's about tribes. It's about
Speaking of tribes,
being in the tribe. Yeah.
It seems that your parachute regiment tribe heavily impacted your life.
Yeah, I think so. My father was also in the airborne forces over here too. My grandfather was a regimental sergeant major on D-Day. The military thing has been a bit of a line. My dad got out and had a successful business career, and I've done that too. So, and I only actually joined the military because after a failed athletics career, maybe I realized I wasn't going to get to the Olympics in Sydney. I'd swapped from rowing, which was my first sport, to triathlon. And only a few people from each nation go to Olympics for triathlon. In this case, we had 3 places, and most nations only had 2. And I was in the top 5 or so, but I wasn't going to make it. So I made a kind of bit of a snap decision to follow in father and grandfather and uncle's footsteps and join the military because I didn't want a proper job. So that was me.
Well, and that was all the way back like college age.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So off the bat in '98, I went to Sandhurst, which is our equivalent of West Point, did my 1 year of officer training. Incidentally, met my wife there. So we met in military training. Yeah, subsequently had 3 daughters who are now touching into their 20s. So I did that. I did a hostage rescue in Sierra Leone 25 years ago, almost exactly 25 years ago. And I'm just off to Sierra Leone tomorrow to go and see the 2 villages where we rescued the hostages from and rescued our equipment. But I got wounded halfway through that attack. And actually we were CASEVAC'd back to Freetown and there were about 9 of us who were wounded. One of the guys, unfortunately, one of the troopers from the SAS, died on that heli flight
Wow.
out. And I think since then, it's been a real privilege, but particularly kind of as I've left the military and got into business and so on, looking back on those times and that the kind of the privilege of commanding soldiers on operations has left me with this kind of desire to try and put a little bit back in terms of the charity thing that you mentioned at the start, and part of it for me at least is like in the military framing, you talk about going to Valhalla when you die, the kind of
Yes.
the glory, of the warriors. So, and in order to get to Valhalla, you have to kind of die with a sword in your hand, perhaps a metaphorical sword now. So I've always, like, alongside a normal life, married and with kids and with a day job, I've always tried to do these other kind of challenges that I'm kind of happiest when I'm on a mission. So they've varied. I like the variety. So yeah, you mentioned about the marathon. So I did a marathon with a 40-pound pack on my back and got the Guinness World Record for that. And then did it with a 20-pound pack. I kind of got into my head it might be quite fun to try and go under 3 hours with a pack, which I achieved. And that record
Wow.
still stands, actually. It's 2:56. So I ruined a few people's finish photos that day, I'm afraid. But but yeah, so it was that kind of thing. Then I got it. Then I thought, oh, I better do a proper marathon, like just normal running, and did Berlin, I think back in 2016. And then I did the Devisers Westminster canoe race with my dad, actually, which it's a 125-mile non-stop canoe race. A pretty good race. Goes through Easter weekend here in the UK, so the weather can be quite bad. That's trying to get under 24 hours, and we did 22 and a half. I've done the Bob Graham Round, which is another 24-hour challenge here in the UK, which was good fun up in our Lake District. And I've done a range of different things. Some local ones over COVID, where there's a long distance footpath that goes through my town called the South Downs Way, and so I've got the record for that one way on a mountain bike, and I got 20 minutes off the record for the double on that, going there and back, so around 200 miles. And off the back of that, I also did the river I live on, the source to the sea. The first, it's only about 30 miles long, but the first 10 miles or so is basically a ditch. So, and you have to do it in the winter, so because otherwise there's too much undergrowth. That was an interesting experience in a relatively short daylight hours, trying to get down to the sea. I think I did it in just under 11 hours. So it's that kind of challenge. And then got into my head, well, maybe it'd be quite fun, given I live on an island, to get down to the river, turn right, and just keep going until I get back to where I started from. So that's what I did in the summer.
So your source to sea was last winter?
No, that was a few years ago. That was
Okay.
I can't remember when. So but that was just a bit of fun. It wasn't that much of a It was not that much of a physical challenge. It was more just like a fun thing to do.
But it was an inspiring, fun thing to do, it sounds like.
Yeah, it got me thinking. Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. So, Mike, you've been choosing challenges and doing challenges for quite a while. It sounds like a lifestyle for you. Why? Why do you do that?
I think it's in combination with having a day job. I think we as human beings, like Homo sapiens, has definitely not evolved to sit looking at, in my case, 2 screens most of the day, sat on my backside. That is, I don't think, terribly healthy. I also think we're kind of bombarded with we're bombarded with calories. That's one thing, and we're also bombarded with information, and that's completely alien to the whole of our evolution. And so I quite like kind of chasing scarcity, I guess you might say, getting away from that constant bombardment. It's headspace, I guess you'd say. So I've always kept myself fit and got out and done stuff, and I like doing these different things where you can utilize what you've learned so far from life, and also ideally learn a whole load more stuff. And you're kind of growing. Then it's also just amazing. I mean, you're in Colorado, so you're preaching to the converted, but being out in nature is pretty good for the soul. So I like to try and get outside, kind of commune with nature. I like moving fast under my own steam, through the landscape. And I'm hoping, I've just turned 50. I've almost done all the responsibilities of bringing up three daughters, and yeah, very much looking at, doing reasonably well in terms of my business. So looking forward to hopefully 20 years spending with time with my wife and out in nature, or myself. And I love surfing or stand-up paddle surfing. I like foilboarding. I like winging. I like all kinds of different stuff. And then I'm going to get back into paragliding, which is something I briefly did a long time ago. Hopefully do some long distance walking, some long cycling, and hopefully a whole ton more rowing, expedition rowing, because this boat that I use to go around Britain is just the most awesome adventure craft. Really awesome. Designed by Colin Angus over on the west coast of the States. I think he lives in Port Townsend now. And yeah, it's an awesome boat.
Well, I wanted to talk about the details of the boat, but I want to dig into this lifestyle just a little bit more before we dive into that. As an encouragement for other people, it's very challenging when you get into the grind of the daily work routine to do the things that our bodies really need. Getting out, moving,
sure,
staying fit enough to enjoy the adventures. And over the years, I was kind of the weekend warrior guy who would do big things on the weekends and then do nothing in between. And that's not the right way to go about it. It makes you injury prone, and I did stay in relatively good shape by doing that, but it's much better to have more of a daily habit. But I'm curious what your daily habit looks like so that you could stay fit, and what motivated you to maintain that.
So the daily habit varies, but what I find is that unless I've got quite a big goal that is outside of my normal life, I just struggle to do what I need, like physically and mentally. And then when I look back on these different challenges, I ran a marathon in 2 hours 31. To do that, you need to be doing 80 miles a week, something like that, for maybe 12 weeks. And after I did that, I was just like, how on earth did I fit that training in?
Right.
And I just can't relate to it anymore. Did it work with family life? But somehow it does. And like for this trip, I added up after finishing the trip. So the trip was just over 1,800 miles, like you said. It was pretty much a 3-year project. I just love being on these projects and thinking about what's the weakest part of this? To what extent is it my physical endurance? How is it my robustness? Is it my navigation? Is it the boat? Is it the electronics? Is it, how can I just improve all of these things? How can I test them most effectively? I was having to do lots of rowing at night, so I did lots of practice rowing at night. But I did 2,743 miles in the boat before I started.
Before you started.
Before I started. And a lot of that was on the sea. A lot of it was in the nighttime. I crossed over the channel from where I live. So on the Meridian line, I crossed the channel, like back over to France to be at D-Day for the Pegasus Bridge, which is part of at the end of the Normandy landing speeches. So I was there for D-Day last year for the 80th anniversary. So stuff like that, I tried to do these kind of big, different trips. One of which I nearly died on, which we can maybe come to. But
wow. Okay.
But generally, like very safe and sensibly, appropriate and all that. But all of it trying to build up so that when I did the actual trip, I was as prepared as I could be, and I wouldn't ideally, but meet anything that I couldn't refer back to and go, yeah, but I've been in harder places, I've done more difficult things. So I love that kind of, that building on what you've done and what you know already, but also learning a whole load of new stuff. And that kind of, I find interesting and inspiring, and I'll do whatever I need to do in terms of my daily routine and training around the normal, the day job and my family commitments and other things to just constantly working on whatever the weakest link is. And for this trip, for example, it was, I was looking to row with every tide. So we live on a very tidal island here. The tide pretty much flows one way for 6 and a bit hours and flows the other way for 6 and a bit hours. So if you can be on the water when it's flowing your way, you're basically with a river. and you're rowing upstream if you're having to be on the water when the tide's not in your favour. A rowing boat's not a terribly quick craft, so that makes quite a chunky difference. So right from the start, I was kind of in all of my planning and thinking, I was saying, right, okay, I need to be on the water as much as possible when the tide's in my favour. So I need to be rowing 6 to 8 hours on, 4 to 6 hours off, with the tide that had more daylight, and then 6 hours on through the night and 6 hours off to get a slightly longer sleep, and just keep that pattern going and try and avoid miss as few tides as possible. And that's basically what I did.
It sounds like a lot of planning would have to go into sorting all that out. So what was your route? Explain your route for us.
Yeah, so if the island it's Great Britain, I've found out. So the United Kingdom includes Northern Ireland, which is
right,
I
sure.
found out. But yeah, so the island of Great Britain. So as I mentioned, I'm on the Meridian line, so I wanted to start where I'm from. So I was sponsored by the local brewery as well, was something pretty cool. So I started at the brewery in the town I live in, which is about 8 miles from the sea. Rode down the river. The clock started when I went round the lighthouse in New Haven. Rode westwards, so round Land's End, down to and around Land's End, and then headed up the North Cornish and then the Devon coast over to Wales, which is quite a chunky crossing. The plan was then you've got this thing called the Irish Sea, which is a kind of semi-enclosed sea between Ireland and Wales, and then in northern England and then Scotland. The plan was to hop over to, it's not a hop, it's like a 50-mile paddle, but over to Southern Ireland and go up the east coast of Ireland, which is normally the way to go because you're protected from southwesterly prevailing kind of low pressure systems here. But we had a really unusual summer this year, and so we had blocking high pressure system a lot. Really dominated the weather system. Really dominated the weather. So I actually ended up leaving earlier than I planned to be ready to go. My window was starting on the 4th of May, but in the end I left on the 30th of April because the weather was so good, and I just kind of had to go. Once I got to southern Wales, it was way windier over on the Irish side of the Irish Sea. So we hugged the Welsh coast, and I did a number of kind of relatively long chunks across. I mean, if anyone's super interested, you can go on Strava and see all of my different things, and also the website is pegasusround.uk. And then hug the coast of Wales, which is really difficult because there's loads of tidal races there. Then had to hug the coast of England, which again was really difficult because the tide goes in and out a long way there. So you're 2 or 3 kilometers away from the land properly when the tide's out. Because I was trying to use the tide so effectively, that was really quite problematic. Then I got into Scotland. Then I crossed over to Scotland, and then went up and around. Once I got to somewhere called Oban, which is in the Western Isles, I had a really big decision choice, and it was kind of the biggest decision on the trip. Was, do I try and go all the way around the top of Scotland, which was the plan? But we had some proper weather coming, low pressure systems coming in, and I'd recce'd that top bit of Scotland. It's got some of the biggest tidal races in the world, so I wasn't underestimating it. And I decided, instead of maybe having to hang around waiting for 7 to 10 days, I'm going to keep moving. And I went up what's known as the Caledonian Canal, so where Loch Ness is, which many listeners may have heard of. I didn't see the Loch Ness Monster. I think
bummer.
I was the Loch Ness Monster for a little bit, but yeah. So it took me 2 days to kind of cut through. So I did some really cool portaging along the Caledonian Canal. One was a 2-kilometer portage, so I had some little wheels for the boat, and then along Loch Lochy, and then along Loch Ness, and then out to Inverness, and then I went round. So yeah, when you look at my route, I've chopped off this top bit of the UK. But interestingly, my total mileage of a bit over 1,800 miles is pretty much the same. It's 1 day's paddling difference from guys who've gone all the way around the top, but done the direct route up the Irish Sea. So there's a very cool guy, a Polish guy, who went round in a sea kayak this year, called Sebastian Stubski. He went around super quick, and he's got the record now for kayaking around. And he was helped by a guy called Mike Lambert, who went around last year, and both of them went round the top, but both of them basically did the same mileage I did. It kind of was swings and roundabouts, but and I got a different route in, but and then down the east coast of the UK, you basically hug the coast. If you look at the shape, the shortest line is inshore, whereas on the west side, the shortest line is often cutting across these large indents, which mostly they were a little bit over a tide. Like they'd take me, more than more like 8 hours to 10 hours, which made some of the planning quite cheeky because you're often arriving at somewhere where there's a tidal race. You're trying to time it right to arrive on slack tide and not get hammered. So yeah, broadly, was successful in doing that.
Wow. So tell us about the boat. You're talking about these big open water crossings, and it would take the right kind of boat to do that well, but it has to be light enough and small enough to paddle quickly at the same time. So what is this thing?
Yeah, so it's an Angus rowboat expedition. That's the design. And Colin, some of your listeners will be familiar with Colin and Julie Angus. They've done all kinds of amazing adventures, a while back now. Colin, I think the two of them designed the boat for an amazing trip that they did. I don't know how many, a decade ago maybe, where they tried to go they did succeed in going from John O'Groats on the north coast of Scotland to Aleppo in Syria, which is 7,500 miles over the course of one summer. And they designed the boat so that it's got a front hatch behind where the rowing position was that's big enough to fold up a bike and a trailer and tow the rowing boat when they were cycling.
Okay.
They ended up cycling pretty damn slowly because they had all of their expedition kit. No, they didn't have all of their food for the whole trip, but they had a lot of expedition kit in the boat, and so towing that on a bike is not fast. But that's what they did. That's why they designed the boat. And when I started getting into my head this idea of all going around Britain, I can't remember exactly why, but I came across Colin's website. I got in touch with him, and you can buy the designs. And a mate of mine's a really good boat builder, so he built the boat for me. We actually built a second boat, so I had a kind of training boat and then a live boat for the trip itself. So yeah, so that is just a stunning design. It's flat bottomed, which most people, when they look at it, think, "Oh, that's really strange. You're not going to track very well." But when the boat's seated low in the water, when it's got a decent load to it, it tracks amazingly well. It's really good in pretty much whatever you chuck at it. I can row. Crucial thing is the tide. So how the water is moving. But I rode consistently into 15 knot headwind. It will tolerate. I could still make forward progress with maybe a 20 knot, 25 knot headwind.
Wow.
Once you start to get the wind over the water, over any substantial amount of water for a few hours, then you get into a different ballpark because you built up a small sea, with 2 to 3 foot waves. I never really had any proper swell. I had little bits of okay swell, but I'm a surfer, so I wasn't too worried about the swell. The swell, when it's not breaking, like you can just tolerate, house size swell. It's not a problem. It's actually this shitty little short, 2 to 3 foot waves that are breaking because of either the shallow water or because of the wind. Then you get a little bit wet, but other than that, the boat is honestly, it's just the most awesome thing. And like having done the miles I've done in it and still love it that much, it's pretty good.
It must be doing something right then. So
yeah.
How much does that boat weigh, roughly?
I don't know exactly, but empty, it's probably like 40 pounds or 50 pounds or something like that. So it's a marine ply with fiberglass construction, epoxy. So it's a very good, if you're making like short runs of different things, where it doesn't justify making a mold, it's a really good construction technique. It's really robust, solid. I dragged the boat up the beach. It took a horrible pounding. We had 2 layers of glass on the bottom, and quite a lot of that had come off by the time I got up to Scotland, and we had to do some repairs. But basically, it's and it has a load of sealed compartments. I could sleep in the boat. So the front bulkhead, we cut out like a foot shape, or shape where I could stick my
Really?
feet through. Yeah, so not on the water ever, but dragging the boat up the beach. If the weather was bad, I could get into the front hatch. And we designed, which Colin didn't have, a kind of tent structure for the front hatch cover. And so yeah, that was my kind of sleeping position. So I didn't take a tent, for example. I took a hooped bivy bag. So, and everything was all about trying to minimize downtime.
Sure.
Any time when I'm not moving forward on the water, it's going to take you infinity time to actually finish the trip. So I was desperately trying to spend as much time either sleeping, eating, doing something that is preparing me to move forward again, and then get back on the water as soon as I could. So yeah, I kind of slept on the beach generally. We've got a kind of really amazing institution here in the UK called the RNLI, which is the Royal National Lifeboat Institution. They just celebrated their 200th centenary, and so I was quite engaged with them. There was someone who used to be in the parachute regiment who was relatively senior there, and particularly up in Scotland. So at various stages, and especially on the East Coast when I was coming back down again, I was able to stay in their lifeboat stations.
Hmm.
So they'd call ahead and say, "Oh, there's this madman rowing down the coast. Can you put him up?" And so yeah, that was just incredible because they're by definition they're in a perfect place. They're
Right.
generally in a harbour, but then on the waterfront, and I could drag my boat up a slipway or just tie it off on a pontoon, get my kind of sleeping stuff out, and get out of my wet kit. Normally have a shower, which was just so civilized it wasn't true, and then yeah, get some food down my neck, get food prepped for the next leg, and then get my head down for 4 hours, and then go again. So yeah, it was compared to a lot of, I guess, your interviewees who are doing properly hardcore stuff out in the remote wilds. This was pretty civilized.
Civilized, but rowing 1,820 miles is a big effort.
Yeah, yeah, it was a decent push.
I've been curious about this. I think it would be so hard on one's back unless you have a very, very strong back, but it might have something to do with the configuration of the vessel as well. But how did you feel physically when you're rowing these big distances? And you had to do some major crossings where you just had to keep going. So,
Yeah,
have you heard of the 5 love languages? I believe they're physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, and gifts. And here's the tough part for me. My wife's love language is gifts, and I'm just no good at it. That's why I am really excited about today's sponsor, Uncommon Goods. The holidays sneak up fast, but it's not too early to get your shopping done and actually have fun with it. Uncommon Goods makes holiday shopping stress-free and joyful with thousands of one-of-a-kind gifts that you can't find anywhere else. And I want to stress the one-of-a-kind bit. That's why I like this. After a few years of holiday presents, it starts to feel like there's really nothing that the other person really needs. So I'm always looking for a unique gift that expresses my personality and the recipient's personality in a way that says, I love you uniquely, but that's really hard for me. Uncommon Goods looks for products that are high quality, unique, and often handmade or made in the U.S. Many are crafted by independent artists and small businesses, and because they're made in small batches, the best finds can really sell out fast. But their site is loaded with unique gifts that you're not going to find anywhere else, and this really helps me. Uncommon Goods has something for everyone, from moms and dads to kids and teens, from book lovers, history buffs, and die-hard football fans to foodies, mixologists, and avid gardeners. You'll find thousands of gift ideas that you won't find anywhere else. When you shop at Uncommon Goods, you're supporting artists and small independent businesses. Many of their handcrafted products are made in small batches, so shop now before they sell out this holiday season. And you know how I'm always talking about doing things that matter, that make a difference for others, even in your adventures? Well, I love this about Uncommon Goods. They give $1 to a nonprofit partner of your choice for every purchase, and they've donated more than $3 million to date. That's fantastic. So shop early, have fun, and cross some names off your list today. To get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/ASP. That's uncommongoods.com/ASP for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods. We're all out of the ordinary. Hey friends, here at the Adventure Sports Podcast, health is really a priority. That's part of the reason why for over 10 years we've been encouraging people to get out there and have some fun, because when we become more active, it makes us healthier. Our focus on health is one of the reasons that I'm excited about today's sponsor, True Diagnostic. Did you know that your calendar age doesn't always match how old your body truly is? Your biological age, the age of your cells and organs, is actually the number one predictor of your risk for serious diseases like heart disease, cancer, dementia, and more. That's why learning your biological age can be truly life-changing, and that's exactly what the True Age test from True Diagnostic helps you do. It's a simple at-home test. You just prick your finger and then use the provided packaging and a prepaid envelope to send the sample in for testing. No doctor's visits required, no labs, but you'll get great information that can help you to be healthier and understand how you're doing with your own health habits. Now, I always joke that I'm 23 years old. You've heard me say that forever. Obviously, I'm quite a bit older than that, but I'm curious to find out what my biological age is. It's kind of eye-opening when you learn that your biological age, if it's just 5 years older than your actual age, your risk for major diseases can go up by 30 to 50%. That's kind of a wake-up call. But due to epigenetics, and this is the part that really inspires me, up to 90% of biological aging is driven by lifestyle. That means the way that we eat, move, sleep, manage stress, all these things play massive roles in how fast or slow our bodies age. That aligns with the Adventure Sports Podcast so much. So I'm taking the test. I'm excited to find out the results. And in addition to my biological age, True Diagnostic also provides a personalized report that's full of science-backed steps that we can all take to slow down aging and improve our health over time. If you care about protecting your health and want to find out what your real age is, head over to truediagnostic.com and use my code ASP to get 20% off your entire order or subscription. That's truediagnostic.com. Use ASP at checkout to get 20% off. Your future self will thank you.
That was one of the major crossings and that kind of fear factor. I mean, I've got this kind of model that I've started doing some talks about this. This model draws on various bits of work that I've come across. But in terms of once you're moving on the trip, there's this thing from Zen and the Art of Archery. It's like great faith, great doubt, great effort, and so you clearly need the great effort, but you also this balance between the faith, the belief that you can do this. Come on, you've put the miles in the training. I've rowed across the channel. I've done lots of rowing at night. And the doubt that, oh my God, I really don't want to push off from a beach again at like 3 o'clock in the morning. 3 o'clock in the morning is
Right.
okay because the sky's getting light. It's pushing off at 11 or 12. That was the worst. Like going through 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning moving. But the physical effort was not dissimilar from walking with a pack on your back. So it was that kind of level of effort. So very, very dissimilar to being on a rowing machine. So lots of people have said to me, I can't imagine being on a rowing machine for, that kind of length of time. And it's like, yeah, no, neither can I. I wouldn't ever want to do that. Funnily enough, actually, one thing in this kind of the spirit of trying to do things that I could refer back to that were worse than what I'm currently feeling at the moment on the trip, I decided to have a go at doing a fast marathon on a rowing machine, on a Concept 2 rowing machine. And
Wow.
I found out that I've run a 2:31 marathon, and I got into my head, oh, maybe I can do a 2:30 something rowing marathon. And then I thought because I did a 2:42 or something like that just in my garage. And then I thought, oh, this could be good for the fundraising, like a bit of publicity. So I spoke to the brewery who were sponsoring me about it, and we had this late night shopping in the town where I live in Lewis, on the 5th of December. It's etched in my head. So I kind of thought it might be a good idea to have a go at this rowing marathon in the brewery on late night shopping. And so I did that, and we had some banners up, and I had my good mate of mine, like helping me out, trying to get the food and the drink down my neck, and he's pretty confident that I'd be able to go to 38 or something like that. But yeah, because of the kind of context, and it was a really wet night, it was really quite humid, and there were people coming in and out, and some
Right.
people were trying to talk to me, and anyway, it was dreadful. Like the second half of the marathon was just pretty horrific, and then with 8K to go, I had my quads starting to cramp up, and
No.
because I hadn't managed to get enough fluid and electrolyte, particularly down my neck. So yeah, so it was just mind-blowingly awful. But I did 2:39 and 7 seconds. So I think I am the only person to have gone under 2:40 running marathon and also under 2:40 on a rowing machine. So that was a horrific physical experience. But so there was nothing on the trip that was anything like that. And I got into this just constant routine, which I guess a lot of your kind of, people who have done a lot of expedition stuff, of just like every hour having some form of solid food. Like I drink maybe on the half hour, but however I felt through the hour, but some solid food like gels or Turkish delight or stuff like that. On the second hour, on the third hour, I'd have some warm food. I always had two flasks of like this kind of flask, a liter flask of I remember this is on radio now. A liter flask, insulated liter flask with porridge in, which was 1,000 calories, or like a savory mix. So depending on what I was up for, I'd have a few spoonfuls of that. And then again, like hour 4, just something small, snacky. Hour 5, something snacky. Hour 6, something solid. I also had the boat set up so that I had a kind of cut down stand up paddle. So I had a fold outable piece of ply that could go over the rowing slide and basically actually form a bed. The most comfortable sleeping position was actually that, with a thermarest on top,
Okay.
with my head on the rowing seat. Again, up the beach mostly, sometimes on the water. I'm tied off on a buoy, but yeah, that folded in half. If I turned around and faced forwards, I could kneel on that again with a little like bit of padding, and stand up paddle. So after if I was on a really long paddle, after 5 hours, I would turn around and spend maybe a mile stand up paddling, and that was just unbelievably good for like stretching my back out, getting
Right.
comfortable. So that was really cool. So I just try and break it up like that, and then you can, to be honest, at that intensity, you could have like, I didn't do the big Irish Sea crossing, but if I did, that would have been probably like an 18-20 hours or something like that. But you can keep that going. When I went across the channel in the practice one, that ended up being 81 miles. The track looks amazing, like on YB Tracker, because it's 2 full tides, or 3 full tides actually, for 18 hours, and so it's a big S. But I did that routine for 9 hours. Then I was pretty tired, and I set my alarm for 15 minutes for a sleep, but I woke up after 11. When the alarm went off for 15 minutes, I was rowing again. So I think I slept for 11 minutes. And then the second half was actually faster than the first half.
Oh, wow.
So it's in that your body can get into this, can adapt to this kind of low level. My heart rate is like 100, so it's that kind of intensity. And the weirdest thing since the trip, as I thought I'd be like super fit off the back of the trip, was the exact opposite. My CV fitness is just rubbish, really, really shot to pieces. And I've only just started getting fit again now, and I finished the trip on the 18th of June. So yeah, it was your body or my body adapted really well to the specific challenge. But yeah, then I was pretty rubbish at anything like normal CV fitness, which yeah, like I said, I'm just starting to get back now.
Do you think that going that long, that hard, just took that much out of you? Or was it that you were focused on just one movement?
It was, it was, it wasn't, it didn't take that much out of me. Like this, the real strain was the mental strain. So after, like, basically, it was 4 weeks of rowing up to get through that, cut through that I mentioned, the Caledonian Canal and Loch Ness and all that. And then I got round to somewhere called Stonehaven, which is just south of Aberdeen. And I was planning on keeping going. It happened to be my 50th birthday the next day, and I remember I was sitting on the woke up and was sitting on the toilet, the loo, in the RNLI station, and called my wife. And it's basically I wasn't quite incoherent, but saying I could see on the forecast the weather was going to change at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was due to set off at midnight, and I was due to row for 6 hours, and that wasn't going to work. Like it was going to be
Yeah.
the last 2 hours. The weather, I would have been with quite a strong onshore wind. It would have been really difficult to land. The only place I was landing was on the beach, and I kind of said to her, "Look, I think I've had enough. Like I've done 1,200 miles in 28 days. It's been amazing. I've seen whales, I've seen dolphins almost every day. I've seen seals. I've seen this amazing bird life. I've paddled through, world famous tidal waters and got through safely, all in one piece. I've just done it. I've had enough. And she was like, look, your sister was planning on coming and seeing you tomorrow morning on the beach when I
Mm.
landed. Like she'd been kind of coordinating it. So look, she's up in Scotland anyway. She was on holiday there with her family. Why don't you just meet up with Claire, my sister, and spend the birthday with her and see where your head's at? And obviously that was very sensible advice, and we did that. So like I said, the next day happened to be my birthday. There were so many coincidental things that happened on the trip that I'm not personally religious, but I can understand why people are, given how much amazing stuff happens when you put yourself out there. So yeah, so she turned up, and we went, and I slept a lot and I ate a lot, and they helped me wash my clothes and all of that kind of stuff. And within 24 hours, I was like, yeah, of course I need to carry on. Uh, but I took the sleeper train and actually came back to where I live, right on the south coast. Left the boat in an empty RNLI station, and then went back to it. So I took, and the reason for that was the weather forecast. The weather was just shocking for
Yeah.
for 6 7 days. So I thought, well, I might as well just go home rather than just sit around here. So yeah, went home for a bit, got my head back in the game, and then went back up. And then I did to get home. So basically, the whole of the East Coast was then just 2 weeks. I did 7 days rowing. Then I had 36 hours off the water because of the weather at a place called Spurn Head, which is where the Humber estuary comes out, one of the busiest shipping lanes in Europe. And then it was like 5 days to get home from there. So I had a completely dream, like, well, almost completely dream. I had a few stings in the tail, but yeah, to get back. So yeah, but and then I think when I got back, like I said, I mean, when I was the most fatigued was when I was up in Stonehaven, 28 days solid, 200 miles, and I was just mentally drained more than physically. After a couple of nights sleep, I was fine, ready, good to go again. And then the same at the end, like I wasn't, yeah, apart from what I said about my fitness wasn't really there. The real strain was the mental strain, just that kind of responsibility, especially, because I've got three daughters, and I'm married, and I'm, really conscious about, being sensible in terms of the risk that I'm taking.
Sure.
That was the far more straining element than the actual physicality of it. The physicality was, kind of resilience, really, just keeping moving. Like, but it was mostly that mental strain.
Well, describe the risks, the physical risks that you were facing, because there are numerous risks in doing something like this, but I'm not sure everyone would be
Yeah.
aware of that.
No, and this is an interesting one because there's like a couple of there's a parallel between this trip and actually that hostage rescue that you mentioned at the start of the show. So, 25 years ago, I did a hostage rescue in Sierra Leone with it was a special forces hostage rescue. There've been books and films and stuff written done about it since. It was a pretty epic thing for the British military. And I got wounded, like I got hit halfway through the attack, but I survived and I was fine and I recovered and all that kind of thing. About 3 months later, one of my really good friends from university was spent spent Christmas with his girlfriend, his new girlfriend in Wales, and they'd gone to the pub and they were like halfway home, both pretty drunk. And she thought she'd left her purse in the pub. They couldn't find her money, her purse. So she went back to the pub, and he carried on kind of going home. Anyway, by the time she got home, he wasn't there. Anyway, they couldn't find. They put out search party. They found in the end what had happened was he was just drunk. He was, I think, taking a pee, taking a leak, and fell over a fence or something, rolled down a little bit of a hill, banged his head, and drowned in a six
Wow.
inches of water or something like this. So, I just got back from a hostage rescue and I was fine. And then I was in Northern Ireland, like serving in the military, and I get this message saying Ben's died. How's he died? He was out. He was in the pub with his friends, with his girlfriend, and it's just like so innocuous. That people
Right.
like that stuff happens. And likewise, when I set off on my trip, 3 days after I set off on the trip, so everyone like that, one would assume that the risk is quite high on a trip like this. But my brother-in-law was cycling in Brighton, which is a fairly big town in the UK. A van just turned across the cycle lane. He was going at 23 miles an hour. He had the speedo on. He went straight into the side of the van, went over the windscreen, broke his collarbone in three places. Luckily, he was fine. He's okay. But again, you're thinking, okay, he's cycling in a town and he gets
Right.
hit by a truck. So I would contend that the objective risks of my trip were quite low. But subjectively, everyone assumes they must be very high. But when you're out on the water, there is basically not very much around you. So I was very, very worried about shipping. But if you compare shipping, even in somewhere very busy like the English Channel, where I think there's 500 boats or something go, I don't know whether it's both ways or one way, but it's a busy shipping lane. And then we've got fishing boats and we've got lots of other things. But compared to being in a town with cars driving around, and
Sure.
you step off the sidewalk or into the road at the wrong time, and you're going to get hit and you're going to possibly die. So I think we underweight the objective risk of normal life, and that's just those kind of things, let alone the kind of obesity and all the other kind of more chronic conditions rather than the acute kind of risks like getting hit by a car. Uh, but yeah, but I think with careful planning, and particularly thinking about the weather forecast, for all of those big, long committing crossings, you really shouldn't go if the forecast is going to if the forecast isn't right. Generally, I mean, I got really fascinated. So there were 6 different forecast models that we were using, and all going into something called Predict Wind, which is the most amazing app that is a New Zealand designed tool. Then we'd kind of output that into the kind of Garmin boating app, and then that would be what I'd have for my track. But generally, like, forecasting's good, but it's still only forecasting. So I had a few, particularly when I was going to the Mull of Kintyre, which is it was a pretty sketchy cross to a tiny little island, which I was called Sander Island, which is basically uninhabited. It's pretty small, and it's just off the Mull of Kintyre. So I was heading towards that. It was dark, and there was a proper like growing swell that was coming down the
Mm.
Firth. And yeah, it's like one of the models had that as the forecast, and 5 of them had no wind. So I was just
Wow.
like, unfortunately, it was the wrong model. But it was in the bounds of safety that, it was uncomfortable, but it wasn't dangerous. And I actually think the boat, which is the right way around, the boat could tolerate way bigger and more gnarly conditions than than I was going to put it into. And so I haven't tested the full limits of the boat. I did a lot in the surf near where I live. So we're in breaking like 2 to 3 foot waves, which everyone said was really good practice for, if you're in any tidal races. But yeah, I did get into one tidal race coming out of the near a place called Corrie Beckham, which is one of the most famous whirlpools in the world. And I'd avoided Corrie Beckham and another whirlpool called Grey Dogs, and I was going to go one way around the island of Lung. Then had a chat with a guy. He said, "Oh no, well if it's not windy, go around the other side." But I hit the tidal overfalls at like peak tide, whereas most of them I'd avoided that. And yeah, that was the closest I got to capsize. I had one stage the boat kind of just slewed sideways down this
Sideways.
wave, and if I'd caught the oar, then I possibly would have capsized, but luckily I didn't. So that was a kind of sketchy moment on the trip. The other sketchy moment was lightning. We don't have that much lightning in the UK, but when I was going around East Anglia, but 4 days off the end, again I was rowing at night and hoping to get to a place which I kind of knew because I'd camped there before, called Blakeney Point. And then this electric storm started, and it wasn't super close, but it was kind of 360 degrees around. Like I didn't, it wasn't clearly drifting away from me or whatever. So eventually I was like, no, I'm not going to make that extra 5 miles. I need to come into the beach. So I came in, but the tide was going out, and where I hit the sandbar was a long way from land. I thought, okay, well, I'm probably safe here if I can get as low as possible on the sandbar and blah blah blah. So I actually texted my a friend of mine who was doing my navigation, who's based in Sydney, so on the other side of the world, so it worked quite well in terms of being able to communicate with someone at night. And he actually typed into ChatGPT sandbar during electric storm type thing, and he came back to me with some output and basically said, look, it is pretty serious. You probably need to try and get to land. So I got out. I had been in the boat there. That's one of the few times when I really did get into the boat because it's pouring with rain. So I kind of got my anchor out and buried the anchor in the sand, took some essential kit with me, but I had to leave nearly everything in the boat. Kind of trotted gingerly across to the where I could see some pine trees, which were just over a mile away. I kind of dropped a pin on Google Earth to help me try and find the boat. And yeah, halfway across, and I went across a number of kind of deeper bits of water,
Wow.
water on the way to the beach. I knew the tide was going out, and I thought my boat would be safe for like 4 hours or something. So eventually I got to these pine trees. I'd brought my tarpaulin with me. I was pretty tired, so I managed to sleep for 2 hours, which was quite cool, just like in kind of fetal position. And then when I woke up, I'd set my alarm so that I'd try and get back to the boat before the tide. But yeah, woke up, the rain had stopped, and then looking out, it just looked glass off. It looked like there was water all the way, but it was just because of the rain. And then I was pretty confident my boat would be all right, but the kind of channels between me and the boat might be swimming time. So, but yeah, I managed to get out. Like I went up to my waist, got back to the boat again, pretty tired. So I've got this big yellow kind of workman's jacket, which kind of goes over anything. Got that on me. Got my kind of hat on. Got lay down in the cockpit. Set my alarm for 7 a.m., which I thought was when the tide would be with me. And yeah, woke up at 6 a.m. with the water lapping at the boat. I got it wrong by an hour. And yeah, and then off I went again for another day in the office. So yeah,
Wow.
that wasn't the best night's sleep ever, that's for sure.
Good memories, though.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. You can't buy this stuff. And
yeah, I want to
yeah.
kind of highlight that. I've said it several times, but you'll never forget that night, that experience, that storm. But had you been at home, you would never remember that night.
Yeah, of course not. It's huge.
And why not go out and do things, right?
Oh, totally. And a really strong thing from the trip along that theme is, we all have so many assets. It's ridiculous. And so the number of boats I saw that were moored up was in the hundreds in a ratio to boats that I saw actually out on the water. And then the number of boats all the way up the west coast, I think I probably only saw 6 boats sailing. And this with their set with like I saw some sailing boats motoring, but only maybe five,
Mm,
6 boats actually sailing. And it was
right.
this is the best summer we've ever had. And up in Oban, I had a chat with a guy who's a sea kayaker up there, and he had two little anecdotes for me. One was they had a kind of, I don't know, 50-year-olds guys get together. He's got an eclectic group of friends, and one of the friends was one of the founders of a big cycling warehouse chain here in the UK, and I think he exited and made millions from this deal. And he turned up in a 10 million pound boat. Most of the other people turned up, so I don't know what that is, 12 million, 13 million $1 million. And yeah, so they did this weekend. They went off to one of the islands. They had, bonfire, and, had barbecue, and they had a few beers and all of that kind of stuff. At the end of the trip, Patrick, who's my friend contact up there. This guy was talking to Patrick, and he said, "Hey, Patrick, I made a mistake, didn't I? I should have brought a sea kayak."
Yes.
Instead of his 10 million pound boat, because you buy your 10 million pound boat because you can, and then you need you need a crew, and you need somewhere to moor it, and
Right.
and so the other anecdote from him was that there's a big marina up there, so anyone who's wanting to sail in the Western Isles, that's the obvious place to kind of store your boat, and he's friends with the guy who runs the marina, and he said, so what do you think, Mike, in terms of the average number of days that those boats, sailing boats, motorboats, are off their mooring or out of the marina and out, like doing what they were designed to do?
Yeah.
Do you want to take a guess, Kurt? No, average number out of 365 days, how many days do you think those boats are actually moving?
It's going to be low, right? You've already
Yeah,
tipped
I've
your
already
hat.
anchored it towards that. Yeah,
Tipped
yeah,
your hand. So I'm
yeah,
going to
yeah.
guess like 3 weekends. I don't know.
Yeah, well, 3 individual days.
My,
Three.
even
So
worse.
can you imagine like the amount of millions of pounds worth of boats that are tied
Right.
up there in Scotland, either kind of slowly rotting away or gaining algae, and yeah, it really was a real revelation to me. It's like, you have this kind of the wealth and health kind of curves, and
Yes.
traditionally, so yeah, it's really focused my mind on, look, I'm in good health, and I have X number of years left to live. Every day is a day closer to death for all of us, and we don't know when that day is going to come. And so you've got to try and get out there and do good stuff. Ideally with other people as well. Like one of the things that the biggest takeaway from a solo trip around Britain was the people. Like the people were amazing. The people kind
Mm,
of supporting me on a WhatsApp group, or looking at the like Instagram stuff and commenting, or donating to the charity you mentioned at the start. But the people I met were just incredible, just incredible. I got into this place called Burgh Head on the north coast of Scotland. The last 2 hours of rowing from Inverness were pretty cheeky. It was probably 4-6 by the time I got into the harbour. It was at low tide, so the waves were breaking either side of the harbour channel, and it's a tiny, like 10-meter wide channel. I got in. I kind of let out a whoop, actually, of like, "Ooh, that was cheeky." Got
yeah.
in, pulled the boat up this little, like, where there were fishing boats. This guy who was walking his dog came down and was like, "Oh, did you just come in that?" It's like, "Yeah, it was a bit cheeky. I'm glad I'm in." He said, "Oh, do you want to come and have some breakfast?" Well, I can't just leave my boat. So, we'll take your boat up to my in-laws' place. They've got a little space next to their house. So he helped me drag the boat up, and then he's like, "Come in. Do you need your clothes washing? You need, it was just the whole thing. Right, you need to go to sleep. Okay, so get some food and have a shower. Go to sleep. I'll deal with your clothes and all this." And his wife
Wow.
Lucy woke up. It was a weekend, and she was having a bit of a line, so she woke up at 10 o'clock, and she's like, this strange guy with like all this dry suit trousers or whatever in the washing machine, and all this. But yeah, it was just unbelievable. So they kind of adopted me for. It was, for 24 hours, because I missed the tide because it was really windy. It went again early the next day, but that was the most extreme example. But it was just amazing. You pitch up on a beach, and people are, "Oh, hi, what are you doing? Oh, can we help you with your boat up to the high water mark or whatever?"
Nice.
Yeah, it restores your faith in humanity, I have to say.
I think getting out there often does that. I hear that a lot from people that I've been honored to interview. It's like if you go out and you encounter humanity, people you don't know, you're doing something somewhat unique. It's amazing how
Yeah, it
humanity
was.
steps up. You know,
Yeah, it
people are
was
great.
humbling. Yeah, yeah, definitely. And also like we mentioned tribes or whatever at the start. People are in these little echo chambers, and
Oh,
they
yeah,
think
yeah.
that other people are evil, or whatever, trying to make change. Generally not. Like go out there and meet people, and yeah, you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Well, I don't want to get political, but I will say this much. It seems like there's a lot of propaganda trying to set people against each other for
Mm,
political advantage. We don't
of
need
course,
that.
yeah, yeah,
You know what? People are all people, and everybody generally wants the same things. We want love, we want friendship, we want family, we want opportunity to do well, to succeed in life enough that we can have a lifestyle that we can enjoy. And I think that those are universal traits of humans, and we can all relate on that level.
yeah, for sure. And yeah, it was just a wonderful thing. I mean, it really was.
Yeah,
And
that's
it was
great.
an amazing trip. I wanted to do it for my 50th. Um, I'm very keen, like anyone interested in the boat or interested in the trip or whatever else. I mean, it's pegasusround.uk is the website, but do get in touch with me. There's an email address on the bottom of the website which kind of was linked to the trip. But yeah, get in touch, and I'm very keen, happy to help anyone who's interested in doing this kind of thing.
That's great. Pegasusround.uk. And let's
That's
talk a little bit about Support Our Paras. It was a fundraiser. Is it still
Yeah,
ongoing?
yeah. So it's still ongoing. We're going to keep it open till the end of the year. We're on about £19,000 so far, which is pretty good given all the donations basically have been from normal people, not from big corporates or whatever. That's the way to get, serious money.
Yeah.
But that wasn't my main effort for the trip. It was to do the trip. So yeah, so incredible generosity of kind of individuals. Yeah, so that's there. We did it. We also did a really nice thing with the brewery where they made a specific beer called Pegasus Round, and £1 from each bottle sold went to the charity. So
Well,
that generated about £4,000. So that was really cool.
that's great. And tell us where the money in the charity goes. How are people helped by the charity?
Yeah, so please do go on their website, support our paras. I'm not directly involved in the anything to do with the charity. It's an independent charity that's regulated by the Charity Commission, but they are the kind of they describe themselves as the reserve parachute for British Airborne Forces, past, present, and future. So they're all about veterans who need a bit of support, often monetary support, but also potentially rooted to other kinds of support for whatever reason. They're also about the present soldiers. So there's quite a lot of stuff. I mean, I know your military is very well respected in the US, and you get lots of support. Subsequently, I don't think it's quite so strong here. So there's quite a lot of stuff that current soldiers, in terms of wider opportunities for adventurous training or opportunities to support them as they leave, and those kind of things are not necessarily publicly funded by the governments. So they will sometimes do that kind of work, and they do some work around things like commemoration, so D-Day,
Hmm.
taking veterans out to there and that kind of thing. So it's a range of work. I was briefly working directly in a research organization to do with veterans. And what became apparent to me there was there are lots in this country, there's lots of big military charities. It's very difficult for them to know what's really happening on the ground. And so these charities that are related to different bits of the military are the best conduit to actually make impact on the ground. And so Support Our Paris is the one for the airborne forces. There's a different one for the Royal Marines, which is, our rough equivalent within the Navy, like your USMC, US Marine
Right.
Corps. So each of these different elements, and my loyalty is to airborne side of things because that's what I was in and my dad was in and stuff. So yeah, that's what it is.
Support Our Paras. And what's the best way to make a donation if someone wants to do that?
So everything, I think, go onto that Pegasus Round website. There's a donate button there, and also there's the Instagram feed is on there. So if people want to have a look, and also just last week we put up a video. So there's a 1 minute video on the homepage of you see it as you open the website, highlights of the trip type video. So that will give people a feel for what it was like out there. And then, yeah, and then if they're kind enough to donate, then please do. That would be incredibly helpful. And yeah, like I said, if they're interested in getting in touch, definitely, I'm hoping to engineer my life so that I have more time to do things like this in the future. I'd love to come across to the West Coast and do something like Race to Alaska, maybe in this boat, maybe in a different boat, or those kind of. I think it's WA360 is another one, and stuff like that. So we'll see. But I mean, I like keeping things local. There's tons of stuff to do in Europe. I'd like to get the boat down into the Mediterranean. I'd like to do the coast of Norway, and then I want to do a load of walking challenges and stuff with my wife. My wife's not particularly keen on the sea, so the ones on the sea won't be with her, but hopefully they'll be with other people. I'd like to go around Ireland as well. Like, Ireland's a really nice, a wonderful place, wonderful people, and yeah, I'd like to do that with someone else, and with it being their trip, but with them doing the fundraising and all that kind of stuff. But me, hopefully, providing a mentor type role, and but also hopefully doing the trip as well. So that'd be good.
Sounds
I
great.
Lower profile for that.
There's one major theme of our visit today, Mike, was how having the right goal keeps everyday life better, keeps us motivated, gives us reasons to do the daily grind so we can do the bigger trips later. And I encourage anybody, if you feel like you're kind of stuck in a rut or heading a direction that you don't want to continue on, set a big goal.
Yeah.
Choose something you really, really want to do. Not just a goal that's like, well, I wish that I could say that I ran 500 miles this month. Instead of that, turn it into the lifelong bucket list item that you always wanted to do. And that will motivate you.
Yeah, definitely. They talk about BHAGs, don't they? Big, hairy, audacious goal, and which I quite like. But for me, it's probably a post fitting on it, but kind of Valhalla worthy challenges. Challenges that I'd be happy, when I get to Valhalla, to have a few beers with someone and talk through some of the highlights.
Oh, that's fun. Well, Mike, thank you so much for your time today. It sounds like a delightful adventure, and I'm impressed. I mean, it's amazing what you've done. And I'm glad that you did it in a way that benefited others. That's also a beautiful thing. So
yeah, well, no, it was great, Kurt. It was really fun talking to you, and yeah, it was a fun trip. And I was very lucky. I was lucky with the weather. I was lucky with the people. But I think most people, if you put yourself out there, you'll get lucky too.
I love it. Well, for everyone out there, until the next show, please do get out there and have some fun. And maybe it's rowing around Great Britain. Who knows?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
All right,
stuff.
take care.
Thanks, Kurt. Bye.